Hi ladies and gentlemen, Adam Winch here with Defenders USA. Hey, I want to talk about something that kind of came up on our channel a couple weeks ago. I had done a video about how if you're, say, a dominant right-handed person, maybe it's worthwhile to go out and buy a left-handed holster in case the day this thing is injured, maybe you've had surgery and it's rehabbing for a couple months and you still want to carry a gun. You want to put it on your non-dominant side so you can use your non-dominant hand and to train with that type of thing. But in the process, I did things with both hands. It was really going from dominant, where I would use two hands, to a non-dominant, just mirroring a two-handed use. So I had a couple different people ask about how do you use this type of thing with solely one hand. So for today, we're going to go from a dominant side holster, and I'm a right-handed person, so dominant side holster, and just show you what it looks like on a target out there and possibly put it on time because we have a clock here. Now I also have Tyler here. He's from a local law enforcement agency in the southeast, say Phoenix area, Metro Phoenix area. So you might see him on here too as he does some of this stuff, and he'll be doing so from a duty rig if you're able to see him do this. The target that I'll be going to, let me show you. Target we'll be going to are those targets that are out there about, I don't know, 4 or 5 yards away from where we're going to be. And they already have some holes in them because we've done some shooting on there. We just recently finished a test of one of the local law enforcement agencies, skills checks. We ran that. We're just going to use this to demo. Let's say your non-dominant hand's completely out of the fight. It's been injured. Maybe you're holding your kid, right? You've stuffed your kid behind your back. You've driven your husband, your wife, your loved one, a stranger off to the side. Or maybe you're smashed up against a wall, the ground, something else, but you still have to access your holster. So in this case, there's several ways we can do this. I'm a fan of grabbing kind of the general bottom of the hem of the garment, pulling it up and pinning it with the elbow. So if you can see that, let me come in a little bit closer, you can see it. So I'll tend to pull up and I'll pin, then I'll come down hard on the gun and then pull the gun out and drive the gun. That's one way I tend to do it. When I get really fast sometimes, or if I miss pinning it with my elbow, I'll pull the shirt up hard, drive down, the shirt drops as you just saw, and as I pull out, especially if I have an optic on this gun like this, my shirt tends to catch the optic. So I've learned I've got to kind of rotate the gun to get it fully out of that and continue driving the gun to shoot the gun. So let me kind of show you both, and I'll go slow so you can see it. So in this case, I'll simply drive up, pin with the elbow, drive down the hand, and drive the gun out and shoot a couple of shots. So whatever I've done with this hand doesn't really matter. I've maybe driven somebody aside. Ugh. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just driving the gun out. So I pinned it, but as I came down and grabbed it, the shirt even released and it still caught my optic. The other way is just kind of throwing the shirt up and then going down to the gun. And as you notice, it grabbed my slide. It even slightly pulled my gun out of battery. But as it went past, it went back into battery. I was able to shoot. So let me do that one more time so you can see it. So it's a pull, pin with the elbow, down, out, drive the gun. Next one, you're simply pulling up high and then coming out without pinning it. And then that one, that worked well for me. It didn't catch my optic. So that's some of the ways I've seen done. Another one is I've seen people pull this, and if they have limited use to this arm, they'll pull it and pin with that arm. I'm not a big fan of that because it's a little bit more of a fine motor skill to me, and it's kind of hard to come across here. And I don't like to count on the fact that I take my non-dominant hard and try to pin a shirt here, especially if maybe I'm holding the knife in, because it's more dangerous for you to pull a knife out than to hold it in. Or maybe I've had this arm broken and it's useless, or I've driven somebody's side. So I'm not a big fan of using this hand or this arm, really the inside of the arm, to hold the shirt. Just not a big fan. Another one I've seen is people come up, they put the shirt behind the gun, so they rest it there, then they go grab it, drive the gun out, and shoot. I also am not a huge fan of that. I'll come in closer, you can see it. They'll come up, they'll stuff the shirt and pull to the side, grab, drive out and shoot. The reason I'm not a fan of it is simply because if I'm pulling this one-handed, I'm probably pretty scared and it's probably pretty fast. So I oftentimes don't have nor the presence of mind, I believe, to take, pull it, stuff it, get everything right, and then pull the gun. I just want to get to the gun as fast as I can and go bang as fast as I can, because in the moment of need, it's the bang, preferably accurately, but it's the bang that saves your life. So I just want to get to it quickly, and I find for me, the quickest for me is simply here. Even if it grabs my shirt, I have to slightly roll the gun. So that tends to be my fastest. Tyler, do you have any other methods you would do that? And we're talking appendix at this point.
Yeah, I don't have quite the experience that you have with appendix. I don't have any other methods. So.
Okay, so there is that. Now, from maybe a duty rig, are you up for showing us what it would look like for a duty rig?
Sure.
Okay, so we're gonna bring him in, whichever target. So what would you do? And I'm gonna crowd you, brother.
No, you're fine. So,
one, because you're a fine-looking man, and two, because the microphone's close.
That ain't going to change all that much with what I would do, other than I'm not marrying the grip up when I present the gun up. But the retention device on my gun is that I can defeat it with just one hand. I would defeat the retention device and establish my grip on the gun, and then bring it up into my workspace.
Yep. So pretty simple, pretty much the same. Yeah, I find the most complex portion of this is if you're doing it from concealed.
Definitely.
Now, there's the other factor, is if you do it from concealed, say on your hip, I find it to be a lot slower and it's much harder to get onto the gun. The one beauty of pulling from the hip is if I pull up high, I can pin more with my arm. Notice how that's the inner arm, the inner bicep. I can pin it more and drive the gun out a little bit better without the shirt flopping back down. It's much harder to pin in front of you than it is to the side, but that's the only advantage I personally find on a hip carried rig versus an appendix carried rig when it comes to one-handed work. So I don't have a hip carry holster on, but just so you know, if I did, it's up, pin, then I would come down just like this, drive out, shoot the gun. Now, for putting a gun away one-handed, from the legal aspect, right? The only time we put guns away is when we know we're safe. So if you only have one hand because this is injured, I'm going to suggest to you, instead of putting the gun down on the ground where other people can come up to it and grab it, right? You've been in defensive shooting, you've put the gun down on the ground, which I hear a lot of people say, just put it down on the ground and back away and wait for the cops. I'm not a fan of that. Mr. Dirtbag could come back to life, right? Or Mr. Dirtbag's buddies could show up and find that gun there. Or maybe while you're still in stunned mental space because you've had to use this gun in defensive life, something that's probably very uncommon for most of us to do, that while you're kind of just meandering around in your own mind and that gun's on the ground, I don't know, little Susie, little Johnny could come up and find a gun and start playing with a loaded gun. Furthermore, I just don't want somebody else or something, a vehicle, a car, something to hit your gun, knock it somewhere it shouldn't be. So I'm a big believer of retaining your gun, even if you used it in defensive life. So if you've got to work this gun back to the holster and you do not have the use of both hands, what I will do is I flag my thumb. So notice how it's flagged? Because I flag my thumb all the time when I shoot one-handed anyways. And I'm going to step back here, can you see it? I tend to come down with my thumb, I hook with the muzzle still out towards safe areas. I hook with my thumb, I pull it up, I drive my hips forward so you can see it. I'll drive my hips forward so I can look inside and verify there's just a hole for a holster there. I don't want anything else there. No gunk, no fat, no shirt, no anything that could trip the trigger. Once that's done, I slowly, carefully work the gun back to the holster and I reconceal it. At that point in time, I make my 911 call, or I'll have somebody else do that, but I want that gun reconcealed and back on my body, because what if Mr. Dirtbag does come back to life? What if Mr. Dirtbag's friends show up before the cops do? I still want to retain this and keep control of this, one, for my safety, and two, so somebody else who shouldn't have access to this gun cannot access this gun. So once again, so you can see this, just the shooting portion. And the gun is put away. Okay, let me show you another one. This will be me pinning, as we talked about before. I'll try to pin it with this arm as I draw the gun. Ugh. Well, we won't go into reloads today, so I'm not going to go into one-handed reloads at this point, but now I come back again, I hook with my thumb, I come up, I verify everything is clear, and carefully, slowly look it away. If you notice, I did really strongly drive my hips out, because what if the shirt has a tail or something that's sticking down? I can't see it. I'm stressed. I don't want that tail to grab the trigger between my trigger and my body and trip the gun. So just to ensure it, I'm going to drive my hips out, look, and carefully, slowly ease that gun away. And if I feel any resistance while I'm carefully putting that gun away in an appendix holster, I'm going to stop, because I don't want to keep pressing on something to where it might somehow trip the trigger. I'm going to pull the gun back out, observe why there was some resistance for the gun going back in the holster. Once I know that's clear, I'll carefully and slowly look the gun away. Hi, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is important for you to know. If we're talking true one-handed stuff, I'll give you another video on how to reload and do some other manipulations, but simply a draw stroke one-handed with the gun. I'll get into non-dominant one-handed use later. Thanks so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button, like, share, comment on this. Give us your thoughts on what you think should be other ways to do this. Thanks so much.